Hello crafty monkeys, it's Charlotte Newland. We've got some really exciting blocks this month using half square triangles and strips, and I'm going to be showing you how to make this lovely boat block. So this is what you need to make your sailboat block. You need two strips that are 3.5 inches by 12.5 inches, one for the sea and one for the bottom of the boat. You need two 4-inch squares for the sails, and those need to be matched with two 4-inch squares of sky fabric. You need two 3.5-inch squares of sky fabric to make the corners of the bottom of the boat, and two 3.5 by 6.5-inch rectangles of sky fabric for the sides of the boat. First, we're going to make our half square triangles. You're going to draw a line diagonally across the lighter of your two fabrics. In this case, I'm using my sky fabric, corner to corner, like this. And we're going to use the 2 at a time method for making our half square triangles. So once we've drawn these lines, we put our fabrics right side together with the sail fabric, like so, and we're going to stitch either side of that line 1/4 inch away, and then we'll cut down the line afterwards. So you can see I've sewn down 1/4 inch away from that line on both sides. I'm just going to cut this in half along the line, and you can see I've made two half square triangles. Now these are a little bit too big, which I do deliberately because I'd rather make them too big and then trim them to size than have them turn out to be a little too small. So I'm going to press these with the fabric, with the seam going towards the dark side, and then I'm going to trim them to size. So here are my half square triangles all nicely pressed. I'm going to use this ruler. It's a block lock ruler. It's got like a groove running through the middle of it that you can use to slide over your seam allowance, so that it enables you to trim your half square triangles really accurately. I do love it. I'm going to trim these down to 3.5 inches. And once I've trimmed all of them, I can arrange them to look like sails. The next step in making our block is to make the bottom of the boat. So this is where you need your two 3.5-inch squares of sky fabric and your 3.5 by 12.5 rectangle of boat fabric. Again, we're going to draw a diagonal line across the back of each of these squares, like so. I'm going to place them on the boat fabric so that when you stitch it along that line and this gets folded back, it makes the shape of the bottom of a boat. It's worth taking a minute just to make sure you've got them facing the right way, because if you have it facing like this, for example, then you'll end up with something that doesn't look like the bottom of a boat when you trim away the excess. So just make sure you've got it the right way round. Okay, so I've sewn along those two diagonal lines, and now I'm going to trim away the excess 1/4 inch away from that line, so that when this gets folded back, it makes the right shape, like this. So trimming this piece off, and trimming this piece off. Then I'm going to give this a press with the seam allowance going towards the darker fabric, and there you can see I've got the bottom of a boat. So now we're ready to assemble our block. First we're going to sew our two sets of half square triangles together, and we're going to press the seams in opposite directions so that they can then nest together. So here's what I mean by that. I've pressed these seams in this direction and these seam allowances in this direction, so that when I put these two sets of two half square triangles together, all that lump of seam allowance is flattened out slightly because it's not all on top of each other. Half of it's going in one direction and half of it's going in the other. So now I'm going to sew this seam along the bottom here to join these two pairs of half square triangles, and I'm going to press that seam open. So here are our sails all sewn together. I've pressed this seam open, as I mentioned, just to reduce the bulk slightly in this centre piece. And now I'm going to sew these two 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles of sky fabric, one to each side of the sails. So those are all sewn together now. I pressed these seams outwards so that I could flatten out the junctions here where all the extra seams from the half square triangles meet. So that's all sitting there ready to go. Now I'm going to sew together my boat and my sea fabrics along this edge here. So the final seam is to sew the top of the boat to the bottom of the sails. So there you go, I've sewn that seam and I've pressed it all down towards the boat fabric, again to avoid all the extra bulk caused by these corners here. So there you have it.